Hello? Okay, it is working. Well, good morning, good Monday morning. I don't know whether someone else also feels like today is Monday, but on the other hand, it's Friday, and so tomorrow is not really a Tuesday. It's like so if anyone confused, it's jet lagged. Some colleagues jet lagged, so it's almost 10 o'clock. It's like you are in Dubai, not somewhere else. Okay. So welcome everyone. Feel weird to use a mic so close, but I think it does get very noisy at some moments. I think we'll have only one mic that will have to be turning around. We are very uh, frivolous. So first of all, I want to welcome our guest speaker Jens, and also who will be moderating the session, the discussion. Thanks to IAF very much for being a very close partner to ISO and the whole accreditation, so the whole conformity assessment quality infrastructure system across the world. That's very important. This session is about really the importance of accreditation to achieve the SDGs. It's really about trust, how we build trust. There are big concerns. It's like a legitimate concerns. I think, especially in some organizations, but all of us, I'm sure we share about greenwashing, the G word, right? It's like, and building trust in the system, in society, that we are really making true, credible progress towards SDGs is fundamental, and the accreditation system has an important role to play there. I want to thank IAF also for the close work with ISO and work with the conformity assessment standards, the CASCO standards that we have in our system. That's very important. And one message that I have is that we can't do it alone. It's like partnerships, collaboration is absolutely fundamental. It's like, and that's why I think it has really been the theme of all the sessions, all the discussions that we have had this week with many other organizations. How do we avoid the challenge and the pressing need to make progress rapidly and to scale globally? It's massive, so we can't reinvent the wheels. We really need to build on the systems that already exist, and so therefore we need to collaborate with many other organizations that have this sense of urgency also, and sometimes because of frustration tries to think okay, well, it's not working, let's create something new, but actually that only takes more effort. We start again from scratch. It's really, let's try to hear those voices, bring to the system, reinvent, adapt, and be more agile in addressing the needs that we have. With that, Anne, I let you introduce yourself, please, and I start. Oh no, I think Jens first.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for having us here. I'm really pleased to be able to represent the International Accreditation Forum here today. My name is Ann Howard, and my day job is actually running an accreditation program based on ISO 14065. So in that role, I work with multiple greenhouse gas disclosure programs, both on the mandatory side and the voluntary side. That plays into IAF in that the goal of IAF as a membership body of accreditation bodies is to harmonize globally accreditation practices around conformity assessment, not just related to greenhouse gas disclosure, but sustainability, product services, laboratory accreditation through ILAC. So we have over 97 accreditation bodies who are members of IAF, and through that organization, we have developed what I would call like a hidden infrastructure to create that global consistency. A lot of people don't even know that exists. So it's good to be able to talk about it, especially in light of some of the announcements that have been made here at the COP over the last week. We have greenhouse gas programs in the voluntary sector coalescing, around common standards, common practices, with the ICVCM and efforts to, get those programs more consistent. Also, the announcement that there's going to be greater standardization around green hydrogen and what that means in terms of guarantees of origin, consistency in those certification systems. So that really plays in to what IAF tries to achieve in having a level framework and having the accreditation bodies go through a rigorous peer evaluation process to become a member of the IAF multilateral recognition arrangement. So in light of that, we know that the Sustainable Development Goals came out of the Rio Conference in 2012, so they've been around for quite a long time now. And you know, the ultimate goal there is to try to set criteria for, you know, our world's most pressing environmental, political, economic problems, which, you know, really affects capital development, because capital development has a direct impact on people, social systems, and our planet. So saying that, we have a new ISO standard under development, 53001, and I have with me today a great pleasure to introduce Jens Heide, who is the CEO of Danish Standards. So I would like to let him introduce himself now.
Thank you, Anne. And as you said, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Jens Heide. Well pronounced. Heide is also very good. And I'm the CEO of Danish Standards, and we are a proud member of ISO. So this is a very good opportunity to discuss these things, and we are very proud that we actually could have the opportunity to be here and look at the exact SDG and exact standards which we, all of us, are making for the SDGs, which is, so it's a privilege to be here. Thank you.
So I think I'll kick it off with a question to you. What is your latest update for the Sustainable Development Goal Management System standard?
And I think I will take it a little bit, thank you, I will take it a little bit back first and say that looking at the goals and having the idea of that we actually had the Millennium Goals before that, and I wouldn't say that nobody paid attention, but they wasn't that famous at that time, but now we have these 17 goals which are quite famous at the moment, and they for us are a very good instrument. There's tons of instruments, also other standards, but they are a good instrument for all of us to try to reach the goals in the end. And I think that the possibility of looking at ISO and UNDP to have this collaboration towards this the measurement, trying to make a standard which can be used by a lot of people, a lot of companies, is one of a kind. It's a collaboration which I think it couldn't match better, because we have on one side ISO, which is, as you know, specialist in making standards, all voices heard. You go all the way around to make sure that actually people can say something, they can participate, they can be use the instrument in the end. And then on the other side you have the UNPD, who has the strategy, who has the engine, who has all the things going forward towards reaching the goals. So I think that the premises for actually starting this work was quite good, and I think that we should salute that ISO succeed in having this collaboration with UNDP. And when we then look at the concrete work, because having a collaboration between those two organizations is difficult, but making a standard that can actually be used by everybody. When we say all voices heard, we also mean that used by everybody, or it could be possible to be used by everybody. We need to take it to another level, I think, because standardization is not always that easy. It can be technical, so we need to have in mind and in consideration that we should actually try to make something which is usable for everybody. And when I say everybody, it's not only the companies which already knows how to use standards or organization. It should also be tons of other organizations throughout the world which can do that. And therefore, when we talk about standards, we would like these standards to be produced 5 years ago. We know that. But now we're here. We need that standard to be out as quickly as possible. And that's the reason why we started out making a PAS, public available specification, because that is much faster to produce. And we will have that hopefully and probably finished in the beginning of 24. So that would be the first step of having a specification, a guideline that everybody can look into, everybody can start using, and then as soon as that is out, we will start looking at it again to make sure that we then make the standard after that. But because the pass will not be certifiable, but the standard will be certifiable. So it's very important that actually organization starts to work with it, that we start to work with it, so that we get used to how it's produced and how the mechanism, and then we can make the corrections so that actually we have a possibility of making the best possible standard. So at the moment we are looking at the standard in 25, so it will be, don't take it anywhere, but hopefully before summer 25. But you know, it's all voices heard, so there might be a lot of questions coming in, a lot of corrections, a lot of good ideas. So hopefully it will be mid 25 that the standard will be ready.
Thank you. So that was publicly available specification in 2024 and the standard in 2025 maybe, hopefully. Okay, thanks Jens. Moving on, the next question for you, a challenging question at that. How do you feel that the new standard will help us contribute towards the mitigation of climate change?
That is not an easy question, I think, because if it was like click, it will do that. It was easy. But I think I'll put it into maybe 3 categories, and you have then a kind of an academic picture. If you say that, you could take it back to Balanced Scorecard, Norton and Kaplan. They were saying what you measure is what you get. So that's one of the phrases that you can actually put into the standardization in a more, for me, academic way. That if you actually have a measurement, it will work. It will take you towards your goal. That's one of the things you can do, and one of the perspectives you can have. The other thing is that actually the companies today, many larger companies today, or big companies or organizations, use the goals. Many do, but they also need to make it, put it into their CSR report. So they need a figure, they need a signature. But the signature will not be made by ISO. It will not be made for a certification. But making a certification towards 1, 2, 3, whatever the companies would like to have, that alone will take it even further, because now they have a commitment. And when we use standard and we use the Deming circle, the plan, do, check, act thinking, it's actually moving us further, because every year we have to look, could we do this better? Otherwise it will not be the right perspective. So just having this mechanism from standardization and the whole work of a management system standard, that will actually take the level upwards. It might not be fast enough. This is not like this will do everything, but that will take the next step. And the last part for me will be, that was the larger organization. We need, of course, all the small SMEs or micro. We need everybody to be able to use this standard actually as a possibility. And therefore, if we are clever enough to make it understandable for everybody, it will be easier for the smaller companies to use, and therefore there will be more companies who at the moment, many small organizational companies, they say that they work with the SDGs. They have specified which SDG they are actually looking at, but they need a system where they can actually prove. And therefore I think these 3 elements are 3 elements that is actually, if you go backwards, proven that it will make companies go forward towards it will contribute, as the Christians say. It will not solve it alone, but that's I think it's a very, very concrete possibility. Yeah.
Thank you. And I think to just add on to that, we're getting a lot of questions now too about from some of our conformity assessment bodies asking, is there a standard on this? Can we offer certification? We have companies that want to disclose on their annual sustainability report or what have you. So I think this could provide a good common basis for that. And a lot of these companies are already reporting to other standards, Global Reporting Initiative and lots of the other, frameworks that are out there. The other question also is that in the carbon market, there's a lot of interest in tagging SDGs to carbon credits. So I think that's another possible area that the standard could be helpful. So on the value of accredited certification, I'd like to get your thoughts on that, Jens, if you don't mind.
Thank you. When we talk about standardization or accreditation or certification, I think that one of the important thing is that we don't make standards to certification. We make standards for many things, and certification is not the most important thing. It might be important in some areas, it might be important for some organization, but using a standard only as a tool, or not only, but as a tool, is always a right way to go. So using a standard as a mechanism towards achieving a goal or seeing new possibilities, seeing new invention is one of the things. But now that we make it certifiable, which is a good thing, that will make it possible, as you're saying, for the companies who's already asking where should we go, how should we measure, how should we calculate, and there's tons of good calculations already trying to say that now you're working with goal 12 for the industry or whatever you're doing. And yes, they can calculate that you're actually doing a progress, but this certification, I think, will for the companies who know already what it means to be 14,000 or 9,001 for ISO standard certified, they will know that actually this is good. We can put it on the front page of our annual report that we are actually certified for these 2, 3, or 4, whatever number the standards they are, or the number of SDGs they are using. Because I think that one of the other important things is that the standard, it's a misunderstanding that it will be all goals that you need to work with. You yourself can choose exactly which of the goals you will work with. So you can choose 1, 2, 3, whatever you like, and work with that specific goal like you do in other management systems. You are the one who's actually going to put up the measurements, put up the progress you need. So it's like other management system standards, that it's not a clear message saying, yeah, you need to do that, and then you can be certified. No, it's you actually, as a company, as an organization, who needs to work with yourself to make these progress. And I think that the ISO standards 50001, which is energy efficiency, is actually a very good reference, that if we can reach the same level of understanding, because there we know that if we turn off the lights, if we use less fuel energy in our company, we know that we reduce the carbon. So we know that we are efficient on energy, and that's very simple standard actually to use, and very good example that we should look at to say, if it's that easy, we are actually achieving some of the goals. So I think that, did I answer the question, or did I talk a little bit too long?
What I heard you say is that it'll allow a company to determine the areas that are material for them.
Yeah, true. This will actually give them a possibility of actually proving that they're doing what they're saying, which is what we do when we talk about certification, actually having the proof of that. And also very important is that we talk about all voices heard a lot. And this gives an opportunity for the company also to have more people involved, because when you talk about certification, there's more than one person involved in that. So it's also a possibility for the company actually to involve more people when we talk about the certification. So
thank you, and certainly people are vital in all of this. So we're going to open the questions up on the floor now. So the first question is regarding if you work with Sustainable Development Goals, and which standards are you using? Does anyone want to take us up on that question?
So we see a lot of organisations using their environmental management system as a basis for driving forward on a number of the SDGs. And I think because a number of the SDGs relate to different aspects of environmental media. So we have an SDG related to water, we have one related to climate, we have life, life in the ocean, we have kind of life on land. So that whole issues around biodiversity, water, climate, the interactions between them are really important. And we also see the SDG around sustainable production and consumption, around driving productivity being really important as well. So I think there's a big interconnection. There's also that standard does provide a basis for organisations becoming more climate resilient. And so that contributes to SDGs around things like ending hunger, because we know that food waste is a really big problem. We know that if you don't understand the climate-related risks to crops in agriculture and food production, then that's a big issue, kind of obviously in hunger as well. So I think there are some standards already out there that do support, and I think what I might do is flip this question back to you as well, if I can do, to say, how can organisations use some of the standards that they have to support demonstrating they're taking action on related to the SDGs? Because and also just a reminder, the SDGs are written for countries, and I think the experience I've seen is companies find it a little bit difficult when you get into the detail of the SDGs around, there are 169 sub-targets. It's kind of quite difficult to manage all of that. So thinking about how you select your contribution, I think, is important, which you talked about materiality. But the ISO Environmental Management System standard is a good basis on which to start to build out on some of the delivery on the Sustainable Development Goals.
Thank you. Because in fact, your question, I also would like to address, and maybe not only to Jens, but maybe I can contribute. But addressing this very question, I have different roles, but I will address as the director of the Spanish Standards Organization. We are an SME. What we do in terms of SDGs or sustainability reporting nowadays is we apply the UN Global Compact guidelines or whatever, and reflecting on that, this is reporting on what we have done, but it's not a tool that for us is helpful to define objectives and establish targets to the level we want to commit as an organization. And this is where we see this new future standard as one that will help us in this cycle PDCA to set those objectives and to continuously go in that direction. And in that line is where I believe that some of the already existing ISO standards and standards from other organizations can be very helpful, probably, to help us define and achieve those objectives.
And that answers your questions. Thank you, both of you. No. I think that actually you're touching on the same point. Normally, I would say, and I still do, start with ISO 14001, because 14001 is a very good kind of broad perspective. But what we see is actually that the companies, they say, yes, they work with 14001, but taking from 14001 to a more concrete what you're into, saying that we would like to work with number 2 or number 4 or number 6 or number 7, and we would like to demonstrate that we actually do that with 14,001. And then it could be so that the accreditation team, they will come back and say, man, you are too focused on one thing. We need it more broad for the company. We need more perspective. You cannot only be focused on one if it's one thing. So therefore I think that there is a need for a very much more concrete standard looking at the SDGs, and it's not something that is going to take away 14,001. It will still be a very good management system for the company, so it will not take away that possibility, but it will be more concrete. And I hope actually some companies, and I think again maybe smaller, they will not look at 14,001 when they think about the SDGs. They will start with the SDG standard because it will be easier for them to pick that one up, hopefully, instead of starting with 14,001 and then go back. So I think this is another possibility of using it, and there will be more advanced companies and there will be less advanced companies, and therefore we need to have the possibility of the different levels of it. And I think, and also for the certification part, it will be not that easy to start with. I think that we could turn the question back to you and say, how do you think? What you actually think when we look into this standard? I know it's not that question, but still, what do you think could be the obstacles, the things that we should talk about or think about when we look into actually the certification part when we go back to the SDG? Sorry for asking. We have
No, as we were talking earlier, I had the same exact question about, well, are we now going to need all these sub-standards to support this standard? So I guess that's maybe a consideration or a question back to ISO. But in terms of how I would see it working, you mentioned ISO 14001. I would envision that a company would be using that and this to identify material issues to them, and then from there developing, KPIs, key performance indicators to try to track and get the data to understand how they can then, tackle those issues, whether it be, if they're growing crops, if it's a biodiversity issue, if it's carbon, they could use 14,064-1 to disclose their carbon emissions. And those are the types of things, sub bullets, that would be something that you could have conformity assessment around. The other areas are going to be more challenging, right? Social issues, biodiversity issues, those are going to be the issues that are going to take a lot more time, effort, and collaboration with all the stakeholders to, really identify criteria that could be used to make that a meaningful disclosure exercise. And certification would be something, I think, later down the road to decide if it's even something that's certifiable or verifiable. So that's my quick answer. Do you want to respond?
No, I have not a comment to that, but I have thought about, again, what you're asking. When you look at goal 2 for hunger, you might not be in that business, but still you work with something that you can see can benefit into that, and therefore you don't use the food law standard or the food safety standard from ISO 22000, for instance. You don't necessarily use those standards because you're not in that business. You might be in some other business where there's not a concrete standard which can point directly into the goal number 2, for instance, if that's one of the things. So I think also that we need to see that there's so many different industries who is actually mirroring themselves into 1 or 2 or 3 of the goals, and therefore they would like actually to prove that they are working with that specific goal, and they cannot take food safety or food loss or whatever it is, and or energy efficiency, because it's not that the usual standard. Yeah, there's a question. Sorry.
Okay. We have another question.
I was just wondering, so my name's Laura. I'm from EcoChoice Aotearoa, which is New Zealand's official eco label. So we use ISO 14024 at the moment. I'm just interested to know and excuse me if this sounds flippant, but are you sort of imagining like people earning or businesses earning badges, essentially, so each of the SDGs. And if that is the case, is there a mechanism to present greenwashing in a sense? So can someone pick an SDG that's not particularly relevant to them and, you know, promote that as being something that they're utilising? And the second question I had, just to be cheeky, was, is it beyond the realm of possibility that we could subject governments to this as well? And I'm just thinking that competitive, having, you know, certain number of accreditations, I think might be great, because businesses are doing the heavy lifting at the moment, from my perspective anyway.
Really great questions. Do you want to tackle those?
I'll try. It's a good question. I think actually, and you can also. Thank you. Sorry. You can also add something to it, because it's also a little bit about, you say whatever greenwashing you call it, but I think that you're right in your perspective. But when we use a standard which is certifiable, then the accreditation team will come in and tell you you're working with it in a wrong way. And that's the beauty of standardization, that is actually not us as companies, human being, who is deciding, is this correct? Yes, we are trying to do it the correct way, but then the accreditation will end up saying, yeah, but you're not doing it correct, so you cannot get certified. So that's I think that's the beauty of certification, if that's the way you're going. But if you take the standard, as I start to say, for yourself and work with the standard, you can easily say that I work with this standard, I work with this goal, and I achieve what I should achieve. Yes, that's a possibility. But that's a possibility for everything we do in life, saying that we're actually going this way, but we're not. And we cannot prove it. So therefore, I think for the many organizations, companies, people, if they take the right path, if they do it the right way, they don't need the certification. But if they want to go the wrong way, it's possible. So, but not with certification. That's one thing. And if you take it to the government level, I think that it's an excellent question. And I haven't actually thought about it, but it would be a beauty if Denmark, where I come from, Denmark, came in and said, we would like to be Denmark certified in these 5, 10 go. That would be quite a certification to make. I think that that would be a struggle, but I think it's actually a mindset that we haven't brought in if that was what you thought about as a question. Yeah, but I think that small country, Denmark, we're not that big, 6 million people. It should be possible. Big country like US, 350, 25, I don't know. It's more difficult, I think, but yeah. That maybe you can answer that. But about the certification, I thought about that.
Well, I mean, I think we know that corporate disclosure is, rapidly increasing, and we see a lot of activity around mandatory disclosure, right? Not just financial disclosure anymore, but the principle of double materiality, right? Now you're going to have to disclose, where you're most at risk financially, and that would make a corporate have to really get at that issue of what's material, right, to that company. And this is something that we deal with every day in the greenhouse gas disclosure programs. Of you're going to disclose your emissions. You're a shipping company. Where are the material emissions, and where is the most risk for error, right? And so we want to look at transport emissions. So you really have to tackle the things that have the biggest impact on your on the environment. So I think that would work similarly here. I think the issue of whether or not a government wants to adopt the standard is a bit more challenging, of course. But, we do see increasingly, like I said, U.S. Securities Exchange Commission, et cetera, putting out, potential rules now for that kind of mandatory disclosure, going along with a financial disclosure. So I think this could help in that regard. Sure.
Actually, your question inspired me in two aspects. So first, made me think that I don't know how it can work at national level, but at least at municipality level, city level, I'm aware of many cities using standards in different domains, energy management systems, some qualities I've seen in urban planning, urban management. It's like the management of parks, and I've seen already standards being used by many cities in different aspects. So, and you made me think that there's no reason why at city level they could not also use this standard, because it's a management standard, management system standard. So if I understand correctly, the standard will not say that, oh, you achieved that SDG. It's not about that. Actually, it's not certify achievement of it. It's actually is about how we are managing our progress towards those SDGs, right? So therefore, I think a city, it's like as an organization, it's like very similar to a large, complex corporation, right? It's like on a very abstract level, right? In terms of organizational and processes and location of resources, responsibilities. So I do, and so actually what I thought is maybe homework for eyes on this is to work with alliances of cities. And actually there's two stands to the side here. There is one that where they're bringing together cities from around the world to start those conversations with them and say, hey, would it make sense that actually we try to talk with cities around the world to what extent this management system could be helpful for mayors? And I had a very nice conversation with one mayor 2 days ago, that he was very interested in knowing more about the standards and getting his civil servants involved in standards development, but then using more at the city level. Thanks for the question. Inspired some homework for us.
No, it's a great reaction for sure. I think we have another question here or thought.
Well, it's just building on that comment, because there is no reason why a national government, which after all has to report back to the UN on its progress towards delivering on the Sustainable Development Goals, shouldn't have a system for ensuring it understands how it is going to make that contribution. So I know in the UK we have, requirements to, and they've gone through that, if you like, that materiality process to say which of the SDGs are within the domain of the UK being able to make a contribution. So obviously we do that through our NDC for climate action. We do it in some other ways on sustainable production and consumption. But there are some aspects of the SDGs where we could make a contribution and maybe we don't, or we're not making the progress that we could do. So I think there is a way to do that. And then secondly, I think there is a way from doing that for government to then work with sectors and or places, so cities and communities, to say, actually, from either a spatial perspective or a sector's perspective, these SDGs are really important and your sector has a big contribution to play in helping to deliver them. And therefore we would expect you to use your contribution to delivering them in that way and start to disclose maybe at sector level. So we know we have lots of trade bodies who are responsible for all sorts of different subjects, manufacturing, food and drink, agriculture, we've got loads of them in the UK. Actually, you could start to work with those and say, here's your contribution and this is a system to help you as an entity deliver that. I think there's potentially quite a powerful way of driving more delivery and action through a framework of communication.
Thank you. Next question.
Thank you very much. There is a huge amount of jargon in this world, and I think one of the ways in which we can really drive the uptake of standards and the impact they have is by making this world more accessible. So I'd love to hear from the panelists, what do you want someone to know who has no idea what the role of standards are, the role of accreditation as in climate action? What would you want them to take away from today?
That was a good question. Thank you very much. I think that actually the takeaway should be that there's actually, this is ISO, somebody trying to make a standard which can be used and understood by everybody. So I think that that is the most essential part of what we're trying to do, is make it usable for everybody. We say all voices heard, which is good, so everybody can participate in making the standard, but actually used by everybody is another goal that is. And so therefore your question also, as Silvio said, it tricks your mind in terms of, yes, you're correct. How can we actually go the next step to make sure that not only those who work with standards today, but also the others? That was why I said earlier that we would love smaller companies to actually take this standard and use it, so it's that easy that it can be used, and it will not end up as the former question of kind of greenwashing, because it's not in that sector. So I think that the takeaway should be that actually we're trying to make a standard that is easy to understand and easy to use. Try to. We will do our best, I hope. So that will be one of the takeaways. Yeah.
I think the point I would like to make is that, and I make this point weekly, monthly with our stakeholders, is that the framework is there, right? We have the International Accreditation Forum providing for the processes and procedures for robust accredited certification and verification, and there's no need to, you know, duplicate that. If you're a program, you can have different indicators, you can have different targets, but at the end of the day, you know, we can provide the existing infrastructure to support that globally and to make it more consistent and more credible. Just on the other side of it, in terms of, you know, the jargon, I think hopefully the standard would provide a good basis that all of those different programs that we know are already out there could pair with this. Even if there's sub-programs or sub-schemes, like, you know, you were saying, that are targeting the built environment, or, you know, down at that level, we could go through that materiality and analysis at a higher level, and then really do the outreach and the work necessary to identify, like, here are some other standards you could plug in. That's my perspective anyway.
I have a question to both of you, or maybe Jose, you can also contribute. It's I'm concerned, as in my role as Vice President Technical of ISO, and having to manage the technical work of the organization. I'm not really sure how the coordination between ISO and IAF, in order to ensure that the conformity assessment bodies, that certification bodies, can begin to deliver their services the day after the standard in 2025 is published, that they are capable of delivering their service. So what is needed there to be done? Is it necessary? Can it be done in parallel? There's no need to do anything, because any certification body accredited to ISO 17021 is ready to deliver their services for this future standard. How is that? Are we, from the technical committee, having the conformity assessment bodies involved somehow in the national mirror committees, etc.? So we need that coordination really to work well, in order to ensure that we are addressing the market requests when they come, that they will come.
We stole my thunder. That was my question. I wanted to. It's like, what needs to happen? It's like, that's unfair.
I will pass it on to you, and because I will say yes, but I'm not sure. But I will come back.
Well, I'm not sure what, I mean, maybe after I answer, you can speak to if the conformity assessment bodies have been at the table. I mean, I assume many of them hopefully are. Yeah. But for IAF and for the dialogue between ISO and IAF, I do think we need to have a greater discussion about this, because I think it's going to bring a lot of challenges in terms of, okay, what is it? What level are we at? What's the architecture look like at the top level for the accreditation standard, the process standard, right? How do you do a certification or verification according to the 50,001 standard? So those things I think we need to do much more collaborative effort on.
So how long does it take? It's like it's something that can happen parallel during the can it happen parallel, or it will take another 1 year?
I think it needs to happen in. Oh, sorry. So the question was, how long will it take, the collaboration, right? So I think it needs to happen now in parallel with the standard. And, you know, I haven't, because we have so many different standards coming right now, I haven't had the time to, you know, look at this particular one in great detail, but I know that at IEF currently there is a lot of discussion around, we know sustainability disclosure programs are coming. We know that we have the accounting standards, you know, on this coming out, ISSB, you know, 50,000 and standards like that. So how are we going to, you know, work with multiple systems in a way that we can make meaningful accredited conformity assessment? Question is it auditable, right? Do we have the right criteria to even work with this is the main question right now. And then how do we set up the right architecture to make it, you know, have meaningful impact?
And again, a good question. I know that there's at the moment like 60 countries participating in the mirror committees, in the PC, so there's a lot of interest, a lot of engagement already. But I also know that many of the certification bodies are already participating, but also because in the end there's also business for the certification companies in this, so they would like to be ready. So if they are not at the moment ready to do that, they will be ready at day one, I'm sure, because they would like this to work from day one. So I think that that if it's not prepared, it will be part of what we are actually doing, preparing this. Otherwise, they don't know how to certify. So that will be parallel, and in the end, it's not the money that drives it, but there's also a money issue.
Isn't the reality going to be, though, that what you need is companies who have implemented the standard and gone through the ability to demonstrate that all aspects are functioning before you can think about having accredited conformity assessment? So although you might want to have the ability to do that at day one, you actually need to have a system in place. And I wonder, it would be good to know if an organization already is familiar and has implemented a management system standard, how long do you think it would take them to be able to implement the requirements in this new standard? That's the first question. And the second question is, how long and what would be necessary for an organization who hasn't done anything like that before to be able to pick up this and have a functioning system with at least one of the SDGs?
All right, thank you so much. I'll repeat the question for the folks who are online. So the first part of the question is, if there is a organization with an existing 14,001 or other management system, how could this be added to that, and how long would that take? The second question is, if that doesn't exist and it's a newcomer to this, how long do you think it would take?
Again, I think it's I think, you know, part of the answer will be whatever they put into it, because you can use a lot of time and then be prepared in 1 year, in 2 years, but you can also put a lot of effort in it, and then you might be ready in 6 months. So it's also how big is the company, how many SDGs are working with. But another picture of this is that is why the pass is out now. So that is why the pass is out, not now, but in the beginning of 24. So if you use the pass to actually start working with the pass now, you will be ready when the standard is actually out. So therefore the pass is very good because it's the guideline to actually start up the work and make the discussions with your certifying body, so you can have the discussions with them. And in the end, it will not be so that you can be certified but you could not, and you're even doing the same product. So of course we need, as in other certification bodies, they need to have a guideline so that we are sure that you didn't slip through the eye of the greenwashing, and he didn't. So therefore, that's also a part of it. So I think that it will be as strict as it is today, but it's not there yet. So that will be part of also new. That's why the question about what will be the takeaway is also that this should be possible for smaller companies to get into using this standard, because if not, it's a failure. So we need to make it as concrete, so it shouldn't take 2 years and tons of consultation, because otherwise it will not work, I think. You have a question? Yeah.
Sorry. Hello, my name is Sebastian. I'm from DECRA. DECRA is a global certification body. Thinking about, I would like to bring in two aspects and ask them for your opinion. One aspect is, if you think about ISO 14001, 45001, many companies are using these standards to assess their own supply chain. So they want to see who is working for me, how do they perform. These standards help them actually, and makes it easier. Everyone speaks the same language, they can translate. Second thing, if you now think about climate protection or environmental protection, 90% of the impact of a product or a service is actually coming from your supply chain. Like, think about carbon dioxide emissions. Now put these two thoughts together. I have a need to assess my supply chain, and also on the other hand, 90% of my impact are actually coming through my supply chain in this case. Will this standard somehow help the organizations to assess their suppliers, to make it easier for them to select the right ones? Because if you would have this integrated in the standard, in my opinion, it would sell like, how do you say, warm bread, you know, it would sell.
Thank you again. It's not, I think, an easy question to answer, and I think that one of the tricks with this is that it's so many goals. So if you are a company and you would actually like to work with somebody who is, again, we take number 12 or number 2, hunger or efficiency industry, and the company is working with number 7, because that's the most important for them, but they still would like to be a supplier. So I think that you're asking a question which is quite difficult to answer, because then the company should the company who is demanding that you should actually work with one of the SDGs should look at that you are actually doing something which is the right thing for your company, and not necessarily for my company, but for your company. And then they should be as open-minded to say, yes, it's okay. We know that many companies, they will say, if you don't work with 14001 or ISO 9001 or other, you will not be a supplier for us. We know that, and that's one of the premises. But looking into this as a premises to say, we need you to work with number 12, for instance, and then work with number whatever. I don't think that will be open-minded enough for the companies. So I think that that's an angle that we should think about also in the communication on the way, because otherwise it could end up like you're saying. It's easy for them to say, if you work with 45,000 as you mentioned or others, then you can be a supplier. We know that you're working with good, you're managing your employees well and all these good things, but there might be other things as well. So I think that's the complex of it. But
I don't know whether I give it to you.
I think what I am seeing also in some experiences is, and you mentioned before the reference, at least in Europe, to the regulatory framework for sustainability disclosure, and how this is going to force all the supply chain, including SMEs, which are not directly mandatorily having to report on their sustainability issues and how big companies are, and I know some cases that are using, for example, the ISO standard on sustainable purchasing to ensure that their value chain, that their supply chain is coming into this mindset. The thing is that even those companies that have the ones in the value chain, they have no idea of what they have to do. So I think one standard like this one will help to prioritize precisely in the line of what you were saying, Jens, in terms of, hey, our relationship, you as a supplier, I want you to focus on this and this for my reporting for next year or whatever. And then the other, this particular standard will put emphasis on certain SDGs, and many of those SMEs could have some other ISO standards implemented, like the ones you refer to. That can definitely contribute to raising the level of awareness and of implementation cycle after cycle. But I think particularly in those regions where sustainability reporting is going to be mandatory by law, this kind of standard could be very helpful, considering the whole portfolio of ISO standards that are already there. Thank you.
Yeah, I think just to carry on to your point as well, I mean, there's been a lot of discussion with that type of regulatory framework that you may not have to start at the very top level, right? Like you may not be demanding a reasonable level of assurance at the start of these programs. So if we're talking greenhouse gas emission disclosure for a supplier, maybe you could say scope 3 emissions we know are inherently difficult. Let's start at limited level of assurance, build on that until we get a few years under our belt and we know exactly where the challenges are and how we can, get better data, and then, move forward from there. I'm going to move on to the final question here. What would be the value of, or did we touch this question? I think we already did that. What would be the value of accredited certification? I think we've had some discussion around this already, but I'll open it up to the floor and see if there are further thoughts on this topic. Anyone,
Well, I think we touched it and I mentioned it multiple times. It's about building trust into the system, right? Actually, it's how if not, it's like actually, I often thought about the parallel with what happened during the subprime crisis. That all the banks said that, oh, we are very solid, we have a very solid balance sheets, and then they went bankrupt, right? It's like if we don't have a system with integrity, we'll be in 2050 saying that every company, every organization, every city will be saying that we are net zero, and the temperature is still increasing because we're still pumping CO2 in the air, right? It's like, but everyone is claiming that it's CO2. It's like, but it's a little bit what I don't know who mentioned before. Actually, the certification to some extent should not be required in principle, right? It's like, but unfortunately, we are in a system that how can government and society trust that we are all working on the same basis? 2 COPs ago in Glasgow, I had a meeting with the government of Singapore, and they said, well, we have committed to achieve net zero in 2040. But in this country, like here in Emirates probably, it's like we import everything that we consume. It's like or 95%. And if I import shoes from Italy and from Germany and from South Africa, how am I going to know that the carbon footprint of those 3 different shoes are comparable, right? It's like if everyone is measuring in a different way, it's like actually, so for these smaller countries, for them to be able to know if they are true, to make their choices about what they incentivize, what are their preferred suppliers, how they think about their whole supply chain, without a system that really provides integrity, trust, it's very difficult to make decisions and allocate resources. So that's my thought. It's like actually it's about allocation resources, building trust to make decisions. I think that's where I personally see the value there.
I think the key word there is accredited, and I think that the value is for one value I see in addition to what you're saying is that this is a certification that will facilitate finance to companies. So the business more and more, and we are seeing these days here, access to finance is going to be more and more conditioned on your sustainability way of managing your business, and for that certificates are going to be demanded, but not any certificate, not any paper. Accredited. What is accreditation? In this community and outside this community, business confuses words, confuses standards with certificates, with accreditation, with nomination, with designation, but we don't do here. Here our mission is precisely to put the emphasis, accredited. This is the guarantee. This is what makes that certificate, according to an ISO standard, a credible one. But this is something that we understand here and something that we must ensure that the outside world, the finances world also understands. So not any paper that any company comes up and puts on the table and says, yeah, look, I'm fulfilling this. That's according to what? Who did that certification and who supervised that is. So we have a lot of communication to do, a big narrative around that. But I think a clear value is for companies to access funding. Thank you.
I completely agree. I think that we actually should start at level 1, which is ISO and UNDP. So we start by saying that now we are making an ISO standard in a collaboration with the UNDP. That starts to be the accreditation, the certification, the mindset, trustworthy, everybody can participate, it's transparent, it's consensus. I thought that there was like 60 countries participating already. That makes, if 10 people participate for each country, we can calculate it's 600 people, and it's not only people, they are experts, or some of them are experts, some of them are not. So there's 600 people putting their efforts into making this standard very, very clear, hopefully good, hopefully. But that's the start of it. And then I agree with you, Javier, that certification, accreditation, that's not the point. The point is that actually we start with trusting the standard. ISO is a worldwide organization with 170 members, so there's already a known company all over. So just starting to say that we work with an ISO standard is premises number one. And then we have UNDP on the other side. So they have also said that, yes, this is the right standard to use. So that, I think, is the main point. And then certification, yes, of course, when we work with ISO, it is the right one to do. So I think that is these are the layers that we should look into, but you can maybe put some guarantee in it.
Guarantee it, huh? I think that I agree that the first step is the collaboration piece of it, and having the dialogue, and that I think that we were discussing earlier. I think we need to start sitting down and looking at exactly, like, going through some examples, right? And what would it look like? How would it flow? What would be the KPIs, potentially? How would we define the KPIs? Would we work with the government to do that, like you were saying? Or are there schemes or standards that can help support those objectives? And then at IF, I think the value that we could provide is, we have that continual dialogue with ISO, with all of the member bodies to say, listen, I don't understand how to interpret this, right? I've got an issue. How are you interpreting this? We have a different interpretation. How do we, collaborate to come up with a common interpretation of this particular issue or clause or challenge? And I think that's the real value, is the dialogue and, working through those challenges as we're confronted with them.
Thanks. I think the value of accredited certification will be in part determined by clarity of communication. So what does it actually mean if I have a system that is, I have a management system to deliver on SDG 1 to 17 or 1357? I mean, that's going to have to be explained, particularly if it can be done on certain SDGs, but not all of them. So a system to deliver on an aspect of an SDG. I think then it becomes a question of, is this, for an organization, do they see the value in reputation? Do they see the value in their customer? Do they see the value in their investment community and shareholders? Or do they see their value in, I don't know, doing the right thing? I think different organizations will take a different view as to whether the value that's created, not just by implementing the standard, but actually having somebody else say that they've done it, will be based on those things, and maybe regulators. But I think it will be individual firms, organizations that determine that value and how much extra cost it will be to do that work. And I think just one big challenge will be, no doubt, the competence of accredited conformity assessment bodies across multiple SDGs to be able to do that work, and how do they carry that expertise into an organization, because nobody has the capability across all of those. So that will also be the challenge as well, I think.
No, I think that's an excellent point. I mean, we already struggle with resources, right? So adding SDG to the equation could be very difficult indeed. So capacity building is going to be a major part of this. Do we have any other thoughts on that, or one more question?
Thank you. I actually would love to bounce straight off that point about capacity building and resource constraint, because of course this architecture trust we're talking about won't work if there aren't enough people to check that these standards are being followed. So from your perspective, Anne, how many people do you think we need globally around the world to check that every organization is compliant with, say, net zero standards or the new SDG standards? What kind of capacity building do we actually mean here? Because those terms are used often at COP, but to help others listening here understand what they need to do or who they need to be mobilizing, what kind of resource do you envisage we're going to need over the next 5-10 years as we're on this journey to 2050?
How many people would we need? I can't. Yeah, an army. If I'm speaking just the challenges that we have in the climate disclosure area, we do not have enough people, to carry out all of the assessments we need to do. At least I'm speaking more personally. For us right now, it is a challenge finding people, training people, getting people who are actually passionate and interested in going into this field. Auditing's not for everyone, right? Climate accountability is, right? So that's one thing, is trying to pitch it. It's like, hey, this is a great way to start your career in, climate mitigation. But the other thing I think is important is there are a lot of other groups that know and are working on this. World Bank has a big effort right now to do capacity building around, in particular carbon markets, but other issues as well. And working with those groups collaboratively to set up, workshops, to do regional trainings, I think will go a long way. Also, once you actually get the resource, there's also the risk that that resource needs continual support, right? So you can't just say, like, we went, we did a workshop, we trained, we talked about this, and now, we're out. You have to put in place infrastructure that will persevere through when they're actually going out and doing the work. Somebody that they can bounce questions off of, mentorships, things like that, so that we really have the capacity to grow this out. So thank you. That's a great question. Do we have any other last thoughts before we end? Because we're at time, and I want to thank Jens so much for your time. Thank you.